absolutely. Yeah,
that's cool. Cool. So thank you for doing this, man. Mike Bradley,
thank
how are
you
you?
for having me, mate. It's good to talk shop with you, but yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, life's a bit different with Baba now, a little baby in the world, but and getting used to kind of juggling, I guess, a normal life with dad life now. You know, well, I know you know this very well yourself. So
my eldest just turned 12 end of September. So,
oh wow!
And it was my youngest 11th yesterday. So
happy birthday for yesterday.
I've been doing this game a while. It's you can see the dark circles here. It's
Is this going to be a before and after shot? Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, all my before shots, I was a heavy drinker and a heavy drug user. So these bags here have been here since my mid-20s. So I always ask people, you know, how do you approach like playing and practicing and setting up for gigs and sessions? I mean, do you teach as well? I know you do a YouTube channel, but do you still teach?
Yeah, I still teach. Yeah, I taught for years and years in person, and then when the pandemic happened, it all kind of shifted onto Skype, Zoom, you know, stuff like this.
Yeah.
And then this last year, I've kind of missed teaching people in person again, you know, because Skype's great and you're able to teach people in different countries, never mind different part of our country. But there's, I think when you're learning guitar, you can't beat that proper interaction, in person with someone. You know, even just, especially if you're trying to teach someone rhythm, doing that on Skype is very tricky. I mean, we got loop pedals, but then when you're trying to get the student to use a loop pedal, if they're struggling with rhythm, that's going to be very tricky. So it has been quite nice teaching people again, especially now I've got a studio built up here as well, so I can, people have been coming around, and so I've started offering that kind of stuff. But answer your question about practicing for myself, so to speak. You know, luckily, like with gigs and stuff like that, be it sessions or function gigs and things, I've somehow got quite a good memory. Like, I don't like using charts or anything. I think it's and no disrespect people who do. I just think if you're doing a gig, you should just know it. You know, like if I see another band, like I see an iPad and people are just staring at a chord chart. Fair enough to have a cheat sheet, but when you get people just kind of staring at the chord chart the whole time, I just take it upon myself to kind of know my thing, you know. And so I'll spend quite a bit of time. Like, actually, I've got a Christmas jazz gig thing coming for this Friday, and it's basically jazz progressions, you know, like it's like, that's how, if you want to learn, if anybody wants to learn jazz, learn some old Christmas standards, it's like, that's a 2-5-1 there, that's what they're doing, you know, and it just starts to kind of make sense, you know, and it helps brush up your chord knowledge, you know.
But you commit all that to memory?
I would do 90 to 95% memory. I remember the Christmas song, that one, I remember doing that last year. Obviously I can't remember it now, but I had a cheat sheet because there was quite a bit going on to that. But I would do like, I would say 90% I'll do to memory. So I think there's 30 songs, and I was going through, like, in between lessons, I was doing a bit of teaching yesterday, and so I thought, okay, I got half an hour, I'll quickly start looking at a few, and then once I can hear a song, I can kind of, well, you know as well yourself, like you can kind of hear where it's going. It's just with the jazzy ones, but through, not necessarily studying jazz, but certainly enjoying listening to players, you start recognizing, that's a flat A7 flat 13 chord. You start recognizing those sounds, so then you can kind of hear that harmony in your head when you hear the song. That's how I find it anyway, you know.
Okay.
But I will certainly try and do it all to memory, because then I can just be in the moment, man. You know what I mean? Instead of like having to stare, I'd rather just, then if someone calls a solo or something, I kind of know I am, and I'm not getting lost or the panic, you know?
Yeah.
Or you know, if you rely on other people to know it, I remember in the past when I've done that, that usually falls flat, you know, because if the bass player's forgotten it or something, you know, then it all goes. So yeah, well, I'll try and do it to memory. But though, if I ever had to do a singing gig, I would have to have an iPad. Yeah. I can remember chords, but I can't remember lyrics to save my life. So
do you know, I do a bit of those, like guitar in a bar, restaurant, club with just playing and singing. And I turned up to a gig a couple of weeks ago, and I'd left my iPad at home.
Oh, really?
By the time I realised I'd left it at home, I was already halfway around the M25.
Right.
I was like, there's no way I'm going back. So I had to do 2 hours of playing and singing from memory.
There you go. Yeah. How did you find it?
It was all right, actually. It was actually a duo gig, so I had a drummer on the gig. Okay. And I said to her, look, I haven't got my iPad, so a lot of this stuff, all of it's we're doing it all from memory. And I just wrote out like 40 songs. I was like, that one I can definitely do from memory. That one. And I went, which of these should we do? And she was like, well, I'm cool with all of them. And it was a little bit seat of your pants.
Yeah.
But there was there was a lot of verses that were repeated because I don't remember the third verse. That's all right. Let's do the first one again. But yeah,
they wouldn't know, the punters anyway. You know what I mean? They wouldn't know.
But it's crazy how that shit is stored away in your brain and you can just access it.
Yeah,
like when you need
absolutely.
To.
It's you know, don't they say you only use like, I don't know, 5% of your brain activity, something along those lines, isn't it? You know, maybe 10%. Yeah. But I kind of I actually like stuff like that when it's on the seat of your pants. I kind of
it shows you what kind of player you are.
Yeah,
it shows you what kind of player you are. Like like since post pandemic, even on function gigs, I just use an iPad now. I was like, do you know what? I don't have the time to sit and memorize all of these songs and put them to memory. I mean, fair play. I mean, I used to, but now I just think like, fuck it. I'm going to put it on a chart, and I'll just. I mean, it's not a chart like charted out. It's just like you said. Sometimes it's a cheat sheet. But I don't want to sit and commit all of this stuff to memory. Especially if it's a song like, if it's a first dance, I'm like, I ain't committing that to memory. I'm using a pad for that.
I mean, I completely understand. You know, there some things that I'm never doing. No, you get some random Elton John song, something like that. You know,
but I also use my iPad as a set list.
Say that again. Sorry.
I use my iPad as a set list.
Right.
Rather than scribbling out a set list, I can just scan through it. All right, like Mr. Brightside. I don't need a chart for that. I just
I was saying the other day, like, I think in the 90s, you had Mustang Sally was the kind of traditional pub function band song in a set, wasn't it? And I've never played Mustang Sally on a gig in my life. No, never done it. And I'm quite proud of that. But I kind of think of that, you know, today's world, the Mustang Sally of today is Mr. Brightside. You know, it seems to be, and then Mr. Brightside into Sex on Fire. That seems to be the thing, isn't it? You know, so it's the new Mustang. You know, Mr. Mustang.
And so, what else? I mean, I know you run a YouTube channel as well. How's that?
Yeah, do the YouTube thing, which actually, funny enough, kind of this year I've taken. Not a break, but certainly a step back on a little bit. I think, I don't want to use the word burnout, but I just, you know, I've been doing it for quite a few years, and it's changed quite a bit. Yeah. You know, the word we all like, the algorithm, you know, and things, and if you've got a title slightly wrong or your thumbnail doesn't pop out, you know, all these kind of things. Instead of it just being, it's almost like about with music, you know, instead of doing all, no, you get a lot of artists who don't like the marketing side. It's about the music, man, and all that kind of stuff, you know. But of course, the marketing is very, very important. But YouTube has kind of shifted where you could just put some stuff out to now it's, you know, it's almost like a TV production now with YouTube, you know. So I'm still certainly doing it, and it's lovely to as well when I meet people in the real world who have seen me from YouTube thing, you know, because I always used it as kind of just helping get my name out there. That's how I originally started doing it. I just thought, well, stick this YouTube up. I saw some people doing some teaching, and I thought I might help with lessons and things like that, and just get my name out there. And then it kind of grew and it started to do quite well, and then it kind of stopped and then kind of came down, and it's just building it back up again, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's been I've had so many great opportunities from randomly doing YouTube videos, you know, getting to go to Famous and hanging out with Phil X and Pete Bourne and all those kind of guys, you know, and jamming every night with them and all that kind of stuff, you know. So there's been some great opportunities from YouTube, which I don't think would have happened, I suppose, a traditional way of, you know, playing a Dublin Castle every Saturday, and you know, I mean, I don't think that the old way of trying to get in a career, you know, it's definitely, you know, social media and stuff has become such a massive part of being a musician, really, now, isn't it? Really,
it's almost like another job that you got to do.
Yeah, it's another hat. Yeah,
it's definitely. And so, how did you fall into music?
How did I fall? So when I was a kid, you know, I think we're similar ages, you know, born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s. And so from the era where kids would actually play outside.
Yep.
You know, I mean, you come home from school and the whole road was full of kids and that, you know. And a lot of, there was a mixed range of kids down where I lived. But I always kind of gravitated with the older kids. So when I was, you know, 10 years old, I was hanging out with 14, 15, 16-year-olds, which kind of seems strange now, but it was just normal. So I've always kind of felt a lot older than what I am because, I mean, I wasn't doing all the stuff what you do when you're 16 when I was 10, but I did do quite a lot of things what the 15-year-olds were doing when I was 10, you know what I mean? And it was, but one of which was they started a band, you know, because a lot of kids, you know, so this would have been like 94. And so Nirvana was absolutely huge. I think Kurt Cobain might have just died. Because I remember them talking a lot about it. I mean, again, I was about 9 years old, 10 years old. And so they were starting this band and they just said, they were just talking about a keyboard player or something. And I said, I can play keyboards. And I couldn't. I could do the thing at school when you're like, dun, da, dun, da, dun, da, dun, da, dun, da, dun, just doing that on the keyboard. But they just had a bass, it was like a half-size bass. And they just handed it to me, you know. And so I just had my little part of bum, 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 bum. And we did that for about 5 hours in my mate's garage. And it was the best night ever, you know. And I remember having a massive blister on my thumb, and it was great. And I initially wanted to play drums.
And do you know what? Every guitar player wants to play drums. Everyone.
It's just cool, you know what I mean? You know, which is the irony, all the drum jokes, but. You know,
I know. Why is it? Why do all guitar players want to play drums? And why don't they play drums?
Yeah. I mean,
why don't you play drums?
I do take a lot of influence from drums because I like the rhythm. So I will talk a lot about rhythm, like the bottom strings, your bass drum and snare and all that kind of stuff, you know. But no, it's a good question, you know. And I'm an awful drummer, and I'm open-handed as well because I'm a lefty. But play guitar right, but I'm open-handed.
All right, okay. All right, we'll talk about that in a minute.
We'll talk about that in a bit, yeah. But I remember saying to my mum, I want to play drums, and she was like, no, it'd be far too loud. No. Yeah. And it was almost flippantly. She was like, you could play guitar, not knowing how loud of a guitar player I would be. You know. But so I was like, all right, yeah, I'll learn guitar, you know. And then I think it would have been now another year. It was my 12th birthday. I got a guitar, so I must have badgered them. I remember having my little brother's. He had like an Argos toy guitar, but it had 6 strings on it, and I would muck around on that. Obviously, it would have been hideously out of tune thinking about it now. But yeah, my 12th birthday, I got this classical guitar, which I'm quite proud of. I got it from Bell's Music in Surbiton, which I'm so happy that Eric Clapton got his first guitar from there. So I think there's a connection.
Is that still there?
No, it's now it's like a mirror shop. The building's there. It's on Surbiton Hill, and there's a restaurant called Liberty Bell. I don't know if it's still called Liberty Bells, but my dad used to deliver to this. My dad's a patisserie chef, so he used to deliver to all the restaurants in that kind of area. but yeah, so the building's still there, but unfortunately it's gone. But yeah, so I got my first guitar there, and then it just kind of happened, and it's so weird because house and garage was so popular at school, and you know, all that kind of, and boy bands, girl bands, but a lot of the garage music and that. And
because 90, I think it was 92 to like 95, it was just, and the whole rave scene was kicking off. So I was a couple of years older than you. I was that sort of 94, 95, 96. I was right in the middle of high school, and everybody was just listening to hardcore jungle drum and bass. Everyone, I got so swept up in it. But then the whole Oasis thing kicks off, 95, and that just fucking pulled me right back. I was like, no, I'm done with that. And I'm going to do this. Fuck that. I'm going to do this. And that was kind of like my first act of musical rebellion. And
that's not bad, is
cool.
it? Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, so your first musical experience into the world was just like, here's a bass, you're going to play some tunes with a band.
Pretty much, yeah. And we were just making, and I love the fact that, I don't really think about this stuff, but in hindsight, I was working. I didn't have a clue, but it was just going by. This sounds good. Go with that.
Yeah.
You know, this sounds bad. We'll go with that. You know. Yeah. And then, and I'm obviously now with the whole YouTube world, and you know, you can learn anything, good or bad, instantly. You know, but could I had, you know. For me, if somebody played Smells Like Teen Spirit, I thought that was the greatest thing you could play on the guitar. Like, if I saw someone do that, I was like, oh my, you're a guitar god, you know, and because I didn't know anything else, because you're just going by what's popular. And again, the Oasis thing, I thought Noel Gallagher was one of the greatest guitar players in the world. I didn't know anybody else other than Noel Gallagher. You know, you're Noel or Blur, Graham Coxon. And at the time, I liked the Oasis' songs better and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And then as you kind of develop, you start finding that Eric Clapton. I've heard of Eric Clapton before. And
so did you go backwards through music? You started, say, Oasis and Nirvana, and then just went backwards.
A little bit, yeah. I remember. So Oasis and Nirvana. My first album I remember getting was Nirvana's Unplugged. And I listened to it. I remember learning Man Who Sold the World and the riff to that and things, and About a Girl and things. And then, I would have heard about Eric Clapton. And then I remember learning one of his songs and going to, I think, Virgin or something, again, when record shops were around. And I remember asking for an Eric Clapton album, and the girl just kind of looked at me like, why do you want an Eric Clapton album? You know, like, I was in my school uniform, you know what I mean? Because it wasn't cool, you know. And then and I think I would have started getting guitar magazines probably. This is about a year into playing. So then you're starting to read about these names, you know. And then I remember I really got into Bon Jovi, and I loved Richie Sambora. He was my man, you know what I mean? And so, and then I remember I went to the 98 London Guitar Show, or 97, I can't remember now, 98 one. And I'd heard about the ACM. So I was about 13, 14. And my uncle at the time was going to be going to the ACM. He was in his late 20s or something. And so I was at the stand, and I saw this guy get up with his hair in a ponytail, a little kind of Johnny Depp beard, and
I know where this
phone
is going.
on his phone on his belt with a PRS. He had a PRS guitar, and I was like, "What is?" I'd never seen anyone play guitar, actually, and still to this day, really. And it was Guffy Govan, and I was just like, "Noel Gallagher doesn't do that."
No,
you know what I mean? I was like, what the hell, man? It was just,
what did I just watch?
Yeah. And then later that day, I don't know if it was the same one or the following year. It's very hard to remember now. They blurred together. But Paul Gilbert was there as well. And I didn't know who Mr. Big were or anything. I remember him in his he had an orange suit on, you know, and his long hair and whatnot. And I remember him blending, he did some classical music, and then he blended Two Become One with the Led Zeppelins. They were the Heaven solo. We did all that, and you know. So on the same day, I went from it's almost like black and white to colour. You know what I mean? Like from Noel Gallagher to like
you walk in with Noel Gallagher.
Yeah,
fucking hell, man.
Yeah, and then Guthrie and Paul that day, and I was just like, well, I'm going to the ACM. I want to do that. And then that kind of started all that. So. And that's when I really started getting into playing. Before I'd just kind of pick it up. But I was very serious, and then I got accepted into the ACM. I had my audition with Bruce Dickinson, he had stopped being head of guitar. Then he was like the manager, but I think the head of guitar was away or something like that. And then I think it would have been Ewan Smith. I never met Ewan, but I know the name obviously.
Yeah.
And then so when I started year 11 at school, I was already accepted into my college, into ACM. So I was just like, well, I don't need GCSEs. I'm in. I remember that. I was just like,
year 11, I'm coasting, man.
Mate, that's exactly what I did. I was just like, this is pointless. Like, I don't need to use a Bunsen burner. I'm going to be a guitar player. And then I was like, I'm going to go to the ACM, and then I'm going to be either playing with Boyzone or a famous rock star. That was my mental thinking of a 15-year-old.
Okay.
I was just like, well, I'll go there, and then I'll be a rock and roll star. That was how I thought. And I remember when I left ACM, I was like, what the fuck do I do now?
Yeah. It's really weird. Do you know, I had Pete Callard on last week or 2 weeks ago, and he said that when he was teaching there, because I think I went to the ACM the year after you.
I was 2000 to 2001. That's when I was there.
I was 2002 to 2003.
Oh yeah,
and he said, because he helped curate the degree exam or the degree course. Jesus, spit my teeth out. And he said, we always try to give people like the best possible education possible. Best possible. How many times can I say possible? Which would then gear people up to going out and getting a job. Right. What it didn't really do is sort of show them like maybe how to get a job. And he said that the whole college thing has now switched 180. So now, rather than prepare people for going out and getting a job, we'll just show you how to get a job. And like people are leaving these colleges, they're trying to get into these top session gigs or even just a function band, and they struggle.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that with lots of younger musicians that I'm trying to get in contact with. Like I've tried to book people for gigs and for sessions and for things, and like people don't fucking get back to me.
Really?
Like I'm messaging like, hey, I need a sax player for da 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 da, and it's like it's fucking crickets.
Well, it's like, social skills as well now, isn't it? People seem to have forgotten.
I don't know what's happened.
But it is very true because the way, I'm so glad I went to ACM. I had such an amazing time, and one of my best mates I met there. Like we've been pals since then and stuff like that. So I don't regret not going there at all. I don't regret going there at all. And I had Guthrie and Jamie Humphreys and Dave Kilminster, and I had one. I never had Pete. I only had him for one lesson. Pete Callard, I think he subbed him. But I obviously knew who he was from the magazines and things, and Eric Roach as well. God bless him. He was there. But I was time why not, because the way it was like in the brochures and marketed, and then they kind of showed, like, remember that there was a guy, I forgot his name now, but he got the Boyzone gig from going to ACM. That's how they marketed it. So I was just like, well, I'll go there and I'll meet these people and I'll be able to get a gig with, some band in the charts. That was just how it was. And again, I was so young. In hindsight, I probably been better to go. My mum wanted me to go to the Brit school. Because I was into acting as well and anything kind of performing arts, and because I'm an August baby as well, so I went in the October. So I literally just turned 16, and everyone else was about 19, 20, something like that.
Okay.
So I was very, very young. So, in hindsight, I'd probably been better to wait a couple of years till I was about 18 to go and have a fresher look instead of a very naive kid.
Oh, you know what? You do what you do when you do it. But you
do what you do. Yeah, absolutely. But I remember me and my mate Sam, we spoke with Jamie. We was at the Electric Theatre, and we were like, we're graduating in 2 or 3 weeks. Like, what do we do?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like you said, no one sat us down to say, like, you want to try. There was no plan or anything like that. And I can't remember what he said now. All respect to Jamie, I don't think it was the most helpful thing, whatever he would have said, because I can't remember.
Being like the age we're at, the ability that we're at, you know, when kids come up to you and ask you, or you know, teenagers, like, what do I do? How do I get a gig? You don't want to give them too much, because you're also going for some gigs as well.
Well, there is that. Yeah,
you're absolutely up against me, mate. So you got to do what I do.
It's very true. It is that is, and it is unfortunate, and I can understand that now. You know, I know Jamie a little bit. You know, and he does, for example, using him as an example, and he does the YouTube thing, and I suppose now he's an amazing player and everything like that. But absolutely, like, there could be times, you know, I've done session, asked for auditions for kind of some bands who have been signed, and I recognize certain faces sometimes, you know, it's been a while now, but in the past, you know, so yeah, absolutely. You know, like, everyone's your competition, really. You know, it's not nice to look at it that way, but you're absolutely right, you know.
Yeah. Every June, every July, 10,000 new guitar players just wander out onto the streets picking up work. So
absolutely, you know.
But how many people do you know that went to your college that were on your course that are still playing?
That is a very good question.
I haven't seen anyone from my
course. So there's
Brian's still playing. You're out the same year with Brian Flack?
Oh, Brian Flack, yes. Yeah. Yes, actually, I would say he's the only one I know who's actually a professional musician. Yeah. I remember I lost my phone, and so I lost a load of my contacts from there, you know. But did you know Matt Blair? Actually, you must have known Matt Blair. I think he worked there when I left. Lovely guy. But he does a lot of stand-up work now, but he still plays guitar and whatnot. But yeah, I think the only one in my class, not class, but year who comes to mind who did well was a guy called Rene Woolard, his name was, or is, he's still alive. But he played with Cheryl Cole at Wembley, and
nice.
Oh, he did a lot of gigs. Jessie J, he had the Jessie J gig for a while and things like that.
Okay.
But now he's completely quit music. I think he just got completely fed up by it, you know. But for a while, he was doing really, really well. But yeah, it's thinking about it, not many actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, really. Well, they might be part time or something, you know.
Yeah. So you're a lefty and you learned righty. So God, how was? I mean, you probably don't know any different, but
yeah, I can remember my mum and dad saying, "You sure you don't want left-handed guitar?" But the bass I got handed, like, it wasn't even a thing if it's left or right. It was. Yeah.
It is what it is.
I did it. Yeah, I remember more. It was. I remember saying, "What's that plastic thing?" And they were like, "Oh no, bass players don't use plectrums; they use their fingers." And so I was like, "Oh, but I've got a blister." You know what I mean? You know,
you got 4 other fingers. Use those.
Yeah, exactly. You know. So, but it wasn't. But I when I was about 6, I snapped my left wrist at the beginning of the summer holidays, and it didn't heal properly because I was still running around like a maniac, like you do. And so I went back to school, and they had to. The doctors had to break my left wrist again. It didn't heal. So I was in plaster for about 10, 12 weeks, I think. So when I went back to school, I had to write a little bit right-handed. So I don't know if that kind of jigged things a little bit with my brain. So there's some things. I'm lefty, but like I use scissors with my right hand, for example. Okay. Or if I attempt to play golf, I do that right-handed.
Right. Okay.
But if I play tennis, it's left-handed. It's kind of So it was it just naturally. But I do have a theory with this actually about the whole, because I remember seeing, if you see any footage of Jimi Hendrix, for example, signing autographs or writing, he's writing right-handed.
Oh, okay.
Even though he's the most famous left-handed guitar player, but he wrote right-handed. So, you know, my stronger arm is on the neck, and my weaker hand is picking. Yeah. And your stronger arm, I'm assuming I know you are, you're right-handed, obviously. Yeah. So your stronger arm is on your picking hand, and your weaker hand is on the neck.
See, the thing is, when I think, like, if I just mentally picture playing guitar, my left hand becomes my strong hand.
Interesting, right? Yeah.
But when I think about writing, it's like there's a shift. Now it's like, this is my strong hand.
Yeah.
And when I eat as well, I hadn't even noticed it. If I eat with a knife and a fork,
are you forking your right?
Fork is on my left.
Oh yeah, so I'm fork left. Yeah, yeah.
Knife's on, but if I eat with just a fork, I eat with a fork with my right hand.
Oh.
And I remember like doing it, just thinking it was totally natural. And I think it was my wife or my brother was like, "Why are you switching hands with your fork?"
Yeah.
I'd sit there, I'd cut everything up and then just use a fork just to eat, and switch back to cut and.
Oh, interesting.
I was like, do you know what? I never thought of it. I don't know if that's like a guitar thing or if I've done that my whole life. But weird.
Interesting. Well, that's what I always say if people ask me about what guitar to get, and if someone's left-handed, they've never played guitar before, I'm like, just get a right-handed guitar.
Yeah.
I think certain players I think I remember seeing an interview of Eric Gales. And I think his brothers played that way. He just played that way, even though he writes right-handed.
Okay.
But I think if you've never played guitar, it doesn't really matter.
No.
If you go,
it's going to be awkward. No matter what
I would say go right-handed because there's so much. It's more options. Lefties, unfortunately, are just you get a corner, don't you, in a shop or something. A
very small corner.
Yeah, exactly. And then the whole of guitar is right-handed players. Right-handed guitars. So I'm very glad. I'm glad it worked out this way. But so like legato kind of just naturally happened for me,
Yeah.
But I always struggled with my picking hands, so I don't know if weighing out the universe there. It's a balance, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And so do you you spoke earlier about you don't ever use a pad on gigs or sessions or stuff like that. Do you read music? Because I've seen some shots of you on gigs. You've got dots in front of you, and I was like,
I mean, so my guitar lessons. My teacher when I was in Carshalton, a guy called Alan Pinches was his name. He's unfortunately passed away now, but he was a very old school jazz guy.
Yeah.
And if I taught how he taught, no one would come back because he would because like I'll turn up for guitar, but I knew no difference. Again, this is the 90s, no YouTube. That's how you learn guitar, And so, like, I think the first thing he taught me was Farah Jacka, but he wrote the music out straight away. First lesson, every good boy deserves food and face. So I kind of did that. And then as time went on, like, I'll get there for a guitar lesson and he'll be like, let's do some reading today. And then he'll just write random dots, no tune, just random dots and rhythm. And I'll just sit there and try and do it, and I got to know the kind of first 5 frets really well, from doing that. And then I remember the Titanic came out, and then so I was doing that, and then memory. So I would, he forced me to kind of read, really, but I remember the notes I would find all right. It's the rhythms what would throw me, and the rests and things like that. And then when I started getting guitar magazines and finding out about tab, and I remember saying to him, I was like, "What's this tab thing?" He went, "Tab."
Like, no, don't look at that. Don't look at that.
He was like, "It's the most pointless thing ever." He said, "I remember him like, it's the tabs like looking at the wall. It's nothing, like how do you know what the rhythms are?" And it absolutely makes sense what he's saying. Tab, you need to hear it to be able to do it. So it's in there, but I don't practice it anymore. And if I do get given sheet music on, I mean, I certainly am not. I can't fluent. I would have to take it, read it a bit at home, be up for like 12 hours, and then I might be able to I could blag it there, So if it's a very simple thing, I could probably just get by. But I would never. I can read, but I wouldn't say I'm a reader, if that makes sense.
Do you think the YouTube? I mean, we've mentioned YouTube a bunch of times, and I think it's one of those sort of double-edged swords where I think it's great for learning, but it's also it's shit for teaching kids how to use their ear.
100%, yeah.
Because you just type it in whatever song you want, type it in, guitar lesson, hit button, and you've got like a list of players that have done a lesson for you, and I think there's something missing from that. So do you kind of incorporate listening into your lessons?
Yeah, because
how do you do it?
Yeah, well, I'm a very strong advocate of getting the foundations. The foundations are so important, So like you just said,
all right, you're going to have to define what the foundations are.
Yeah, so I think if you're a complete beginner, you're going to want to get your kind of basic. I mean, I didn't learn a pentatonic scale until I've been playing guitar for 2 years because my teacher was quite old school. So I learned my major scales, and all the shapes down the neck first, and my minor scales, and but I would say your basic open chords and then your bar chords, and just getting used to kind of not even worrying about lead yet. Just playing a Beatles song or an Oasis song or something like that, and just slowly going up. And the unfortunate thing now, I remember once a lad came to the house for a lesson, and he struggled playing a G chord, and he said, "I want to learn For Love of God" by Steve Vai, and I said, with the great, are you fucking like, you know what I mean? I thought, you nuts? Like, I want to learn it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so I'm like, mate, you need the foundation. Yeah, basically. No. I was like, you need the foundation. I said, let's get your open chords going. We need to just get used to just vamping G to C. So that's what I mean about the foundations, kind of slowly building it up. And I, like I said to you, I would learn the music, but then I got Guitar Magazine. So I remember getting excited when I bought a Yamaha Pacifica and I had a whammy bar. So then I learned the theme to Top Gun because it has got whammy bar stuff in there and things like that, And I remember like learning, the Beatles, The End, and learning the three, Paul McCartney's and John's and George's solos and things like that, which are quite simple. I didn't know what the scales were, but I saw 5. So, but so I'm so glad I learned that way of, like I said, thinking Smells Like Teen Spirit was the thing. So then getting that down, and then, learning Live Forever solo and things like that, and then slowly just building it up. And then, when I saw Guthrie, I wasn't like, right, I need to learn to sweep pick and things, but I was just like, I know, right, that can be achieved, that type of playing. Let's slowly build up. Well, to
be honest, I think everybody, I think there's only a handful of people that look at Guthrie and say, yeah, okay, I could do that. I think everyone watches him and goes, fuck that, man. Seriously, what?
It's just, it's just, but I still, I'll catch myself still like, let me check out some Guthrie stuff, because I find it such an inspiration. I could never play like that, but it's like, there's still things you can pick up, Definitely, it's like, oh God, like the way he's phrasing, and even if he's doing a simple stuff, a bluesy jazzy thing or something, it's like, I've never thought of using a major third there with that or whatever. So
have you listened to his Erotic Cakes album?
Not for a long time. I hadn't listened to it.
I hadn't listened to that for ages. For some reason, I was on a bit of after chatting with Pete last week. I was like, I'll never listen to that album. The best parts of that album are just these really wonderfully placed, beautiful little melodic lines.
Really?
Like, if you listen to a song like Waves, there's just one line in it that's just so well timed, so well executed, but it's just a tiny little simple melody. Anyone can play it.
Yeah.
But it's just,
I'll have to stick it on the car on my next gig or something.
I could sit and listen and talk about it all the time. But I've never really been a fan of those kind of instrumental guitar soloist albums. I've never listened to Passion and Warfare from start to finish. I've never listened to Flying in the Blue Dream from start to finish, or Surfing, any of that stuff. Never listened to it. Erotic Cakes I can listen to from start to finish, because it's just so, I find it so musical, and like you said, it's so inspirational, and you get some of those pieces, I just laugh along to it, like, fucking hell, like Rhode Island Shred. It's like, where the fuck did this come from?
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Just nuts.
Yeah, and
I'm sure it's the same.
Is it Slippery Thing? Wonderful Slippery Thing, and it's got that infamous that thing in there. It's like, where does that come from?
I read because I was in. He was my teacher at the time that was released. They released like a little duo album with him and Jamie. I remember him talk. We all went back to class after hearing it, and we were all asking, like, how do you play that line?
Yeah.
Like, everyone thought it was a sweep picking thing. It's like, no, it's not. It's all across, like, the whole line is one string. It's all taps arpeggios across one string, and they'll just shift it in octaves.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And he said, yeah, everyone thinks it's a sweep picking thing, but he said, I'm not really. Given them the choice, I won't sweep pick. I'll
that's interesting.
Legato and tap. And he said, just because I would listen to sax players and to emulate it, I would try and find the notes, and the most natural place for me to find them was across one string. So that's just how I did it. I was like,
yeah, a lot of guitar players are influenced from sax.
I think,
it's just that smooth kind of. No, Robin Ford say that. No, he's influenced by, and obviously Alan Holdsworth. Even though I've never really dug the bits I've heard of Alan Holdsworth, it's a little bit.
It's an acquired taste, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit too mathematic
out there.
Yeah,
yeah.
For my little ignorant mind, So I've never really been able to swallow that. But when I do play with a sax player, I will listen to what they do and try and steal little things, because it does have that nice smooth.
Yeah,
sound,
I mean, it's I think the way the guitar's tuned, some sax lines are just really difficult to play.
Yeah,
lots of fourths, and we just struggle bending our fucking finger over that.
Yeah.
That fourth.
But it's that vocal thing, isn't it? Because you're not where a lot of us, guitar players, you got when you're learning, scale shapes and scale boxes, so you're confined to these boxes, and with a sax or even a piano is much more linear, isn't it? Or intervallic. Sorry, it's a bit more.
I don't know. So they're not. I've never tried. I mean, I've tried a bit of piano, but I think the thing with sax players is they have to take a breath. So it's
there's that. Yeah,
play your line, run out of breath. Now I have to stop. Whereas guitar players, it's like I can just keep fucking playing. Like, stop, dude. Stop. Take a pause. Take a breath. Yeah. And so I just want to finish with, because I know you said we talked about foundations. So if somebody, if you had to do everything all over again, but you got to retain your knowledge, how would you teach yourself? How would you do it differently?
Very good question, isn't it? But I like to think, because obviously now we're in this technology-driven world. I like to think that
if you thought about it like this, if you had to teach yourself piano or saxophone,
so
you've got all of your musical knowledge, but you've now got to shift it to a completely alien instrument. Like, what would you part or port over from guitar?
I think I would then. What I was going on about earlier about those foundations, so I would, so kind of get. No, I know the white notes on the piano, obviously, as the C major scale. So kind of starting with that and, C major, D minor, E minor. I know a little bit on piano, obviously, from the theory. But I would like to think that I would have do what I kind of preach regarding getting those foundations down, not trying to learn some, grade 8 Paganini 24 Caprice thing, maybe kind of start on... some Paul McCartney
Twinkle,
stuff.
Little Star.
Yeah, kind of getting, absolutely. Because then could I always say as well, like stuff like with nursery rhymes, which are super cheesy, but straight away it's still music and there's a rhythm there, as opposed to just going up and down a scale, and then it's very easy to lose where the rhythm is. But if you got that happening, there's a rhythm and there's pauses and things like that, And then if you're trying to put that with the chord, those Christmas times, you could do some, some
jingle
cheesy
bells,
little Christmas, jingle bells, wish you Merry Christmas, that kind of stuff. So even though it's cheesy, it's still musical, as opposed to exercisey. It's like exercises are cool, but there's a lot of if you're a guitar player playing for 5, 10, 15 years and want to work on technique, sitting there with a metronome going up and down scales, cool, great. But there's a lot of advanced music out there you could learn, which is still a musical thing, which doesn't always have to be fast to be technical, but you know what I mean? Like, try and learn something musical and an actual musical piece than just a constant exercise all the time. So
if you're going for a new instrument, let's say you're doing it on piano, your approach would be to learn tunes, to learn songs, to learn pieces.
Yeah. I would, and
use
also
that to build up your foundation.
And I would always also use it learning theory as well. Because I don't think theory is a bad word. I think it's good because then I always look at music as a language, because it is really,
Yeah.
So I think the more theory you learn, just like the more words we learn, we all probably learn obtuse from watching Shawshank Redemption, So you kind of and it slowly becomes in your vocabulary, So I think it's great to pick up. So obviously, the great thing about knowing a bit on the guitar is that it's the same, like you say, it's the same theory, really. It's just applying it to a new thing. So I would certainly start off in the key of C for a bit and get used to that. And then, maybe try D major. Well, actually, G has only got one sharp.
Yeah.
So
Or
I'll
F,
go into G, and then start kind of using that. And I would slowly build it. Slowly build it, as opposed to trying to jump in and go on YouTube and learn the hardest thing. And it's, foundations, I do think is an important thing,
It is, yeah. I think I don't necessarily know that it gets skipped over, but I think, I mean, I've had lots of students that have turned up, and I'm sure you have. Like you said, you already explained it. Like, people will turn up, they want to play X, but like, dude, you can't play a G chord. Can you just strum a G chord for me? He's like, no, you can't do that. So you're going to guess what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's hard, it is interesting when you do see, people who've been playing for, say, 3-4 months, and that struggle of playing a chord, and they're strumming from their elbow, all that kind of stuff, and it's like that, trying to get that looseness in there.
Do you think that's something you can teach? That we're talking about groove. Do you think you can teach groove?
I think you can teach it, but
can you?
But you can only teach it if the person plays the guitar. And what I mean by that, is, I always say, if you've got someone who's been playing for 10 years and they play guitar half an hour a week, right? And then you've got someone, say, who's been playing for 5 years and they play guitar 2 hours a day, or let's say half an hour a day. Now, who's going to be the better player? The person who plays, 6-7 hours a week or half. So if someone is putting in the work, you only can teach what you've got in front of you, can't you, really? You know what I mean? So if you've got, a person who they want to get better, but they're playing, 10 minutes a week or something, or only play when they come to the guitar lesson. It's like, I can't teach groove, but if someone's been playing, or putting in the practice, I remember, my timing was terrible. That's the only reason why I'm like, well, you can't, because I remember when I had lessons and when I was at ACM as well, like, I'd always get, oh, Mike, you're coming on well, but your timing, your timing's off and stuff. And I remember just sitting there, I went home and I probably was working on some techniques thing, and then I just didn't understand rhythm. Maths was always bad for me. But I was like, oh, okay, so semiquavers. If I'm doing like a 4-note spider X, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. I was like, oh, that's 4 notes. So every new string, I want to hear the click. Dun, 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 dun. And then I was like, oh, okay, so quavers too. And I just, by doing that, made sense about where the beat is. And then slowly but surely, and I like to think I'm quite a rhythmic player now, which is the biggest irony, because I always got told my timing's bad, or I need to work on, so it's so you can certainly teach it, but it depends on if the person is putting in the work to, not be strumming from their elbow, strumming from their wrist, or what I mean, things like that, Of course, if you want to be in a Green Day band, great. You can just pound out power chords, and it doesn't matter if your wrist or your elbow, so to speak, isn't it? But
see, I always taught strumming. I always taught it like 90% elbow, 10% wrist. So you keep it. But I get people coming.
Your elbow's moving,
they're playing with their shoulder.
Yeah.
So I've always. I don't know.
Yeah, I've always been.
The first song I loved was Wonderwall, so it was everything was there with a nice loose wrist. But
I've always just tried to have the wrist as loose as possible, picking or whatever, I think I remember
when you do funk guitar, that's all.
Yeah.
Floppy wrist.
You want to be as if you're passed out or something, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was going to say something else, but we can't.
Yeah, I know what you're going to say.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't do that. But I remember actually about the ACM again. I remember Dave Kilminster. He was saying he had a load of operations on his right arm, I think, because he would, which is a podcast,
play like this.
but he would, lift his elbow up a lot. And I think, and Jamie Humphries,
that's your shoulder.
Sorry, what did I say? Elbow.
He said elbow.
Oh God, sorry. Yeah, the elbow. This is my foot, and but yeah, he would lift his shoulder up a lot, and then obviously doing that for X amount of years, he ended up screwing up his. He had to have a load of I remember him saying that to have needles in his elbow and.
Oh yeah, he told us the same story as well.
There you go then. Yeah,
he gave us a whole lesson, and he would get us all to come and play up front, stand up, and so many people played like this, and he'd come along and try and push the shoulder down. He's like, just fucking relax.
What did he teach you?
So we had all three, Jamie, Guthrie, and Dave on rotation. So term 1 we had Guthrie for blues and session styles.
Oh, nice.
Term 2 then we had Dave for blues. Let me start again. So we had technical development and session styles. Those were the 2 lessons, Wednesday and Friday.
That's right.
Term 1 we had Guthrie. Term 2 we had Dave. Term 3 we had Jamie. So
they changed it a bit then.
Yeah, so Guthrie was taught us all the blues, which was great. I mean, you get Guthrie for anything was great. Dave taught us like sweep picking, shredding, Steve Vai.
Oh, nice.
I felt a little bit shortchanged having Jamie for jazz and country.
Oh, really? Because he's not a jazz and country guy.
And he said that. He said first lesson, he sat down and said, I don't know why the fuck I'm teaching this lesson to you guys because I can't play jazz for shit. So
I can imagine him saying that. Yeah.
And I think those were the words he used. But it's.
I can remember actually. Mondays was technical development, and I had Jamie for all 3 terms on a Monday, and then I had Dave for sight reading and oral perception. And I remember I was like, I want to see so much more of Dave, and he'd come. He was so funny. Like you think he's stoned all the time, and everything was cute, and he would have his Paisley telly, or he had like a telly built from Chandler's, I think, at the time. Had no paint on it, I think. And then I only had Guthrie for 1 term. He was session styles. Right. And then he went on tour of Asia. And I didn't see him again. And I remember being gutted, absolutely gutted, because he was the reason I went,
Yeah.
So, I had that first term. So we did the blues stuff with him. But I remember seeing, like, I want to see him do Steve Vai. Because I just wanted to be fast back then, and things like that. So
let's leave it there.
Yeah, man.
Let's leave on that note.
Go for another 4 hours, so it's probably best.
Probably. Yeah. But mate, it really was a pleasure to hang out with you, and we should
you too, man.
We should do this again. We should do
definitely. No, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, definitely.